$36 billion. That's not the cost of a skyscraper. Not a military budget. That's the price of one corporate mistake. The BHP Brazil dam disaster is now the biggest liability case in UK legal history. And the story behind it is even worse than the numbers. Welcome to Collapse Report. We follow the money from boardroom decisions to bankruptcy filings. Here's what happened when a mining giant decided that profits mattered more than people. On November 5th, 2015, a dam collapsed in southeastern Brazil. It wasn't a natural disaster. It was a corporate crime scene. The Fundo Dam, owned by Samarco, funded by BHP, and designed to fail. When it broke, 60 million cubic meters of toxic mud poured out. That's enough waste to fill 20,000 Olympic swimming pools. And it didn't stop. The mud flow traveled over 600 kilometers, all the way to the Atlantic Ocean. Along the way, it destroyed everything. 19 people died immediately. Entire villages were buried. The Doce River was poisoned. And 600,000 people lost their water supply, their livelihoods, their future. But here's what makes this a collapse report. The disaster was completely preventable. Engineers had warned BHP about the dam's structural problems multiple times. Internal documents show they knew the walls were cracking. They knew the drainage was inadequate. They knew the design was flawed. And they did nothing. The reason is simple. Fixing the dam would have cost money. A lot of money. So they gambled. They bet that the dam wouldn't fail before they extracted the last ton of iron ore. They lost that bet. The financial fallout has been staggering. In November 2025, a UK court ruled that BHP is liable for £36 billion in damages. That's $45 billion, the largest environmental liability ruling in history. To understand how we got here, we need to go back to the business model. BHP is one of the world's largest mining companies, Australian-British multinational, $70 billion in annual revenue. They don't operate alone. In Brazil, they partnered with Vale, another mining giant. Together they own Samarco, the company that actually ran the Fundo Dam. This structure was deliberate. It created distance. If something went wrong, BHP could claim they weren't directly responsible. They were just investors, just shareholders. The UK court didn't buy it. The ruling establishes that parent companies can be held liable for the actions of their subsidiaries, even when they're thousands of miles away, even when they claim ignorance. This is a legal earthquake. It changes everything about corporate accountability. But the £36 billion figure deserves closer examination. Where did that number come from? The court considered several categories of damage. First, the immediate cleanup, removing 60 million cubic meters of toxic mud, restoring destroyed ecosystems, rebuilding villages. That alone is estimated at $5 billion. Second, the ongoing environmental damage. The Doce River is still contaminated. Fish populations haven't recovered. Agricultural land remains poisoned. The long-term remediation could cost another $10 billion. Third, the human impact. 600,000 people lost access to clean water. Many developed health problems. Cancer rates have increased in affected regions. The compensation for medical costs and suffering is estimated at $15 billion. And finally, the economic losses. Fishing industries destroyed. Tourism collapsed. Property values annihilated. That's another $6 billion. Add it all up, £36 billion. And that's probably conservative. The question now is whether BHP will actually pay. The company has already set aside $6 billion for settlements. That's a fraction of the total liability. Their market capitalization is around $150 billion. In theory, they could afford the full amount. But will they? BHP is appealing the ruling. They have teams of lawyers working on every possible technicality. They're arguing that Brazilian courts should handle the case, that UK liability law doesn't apply, that the damage estimates are inflated. This is the standard corporate playbook. Delay, obfuscate, minimize, hope that public attention moves on. But the victims aren't moving on. Brazilian communities have been fighting for justice for 10 years. They've organized protests, filed lawsuits, worked with international environmental groups, and now finally, they have a court ruling that validates their claims. The BHP case also raises bigger questions about the mining industry. Tailings dams are used worldwide to store mining waste. There are over 3,000 of them, and many are built the same way as Fundão, using the same cost-cutting methods, the same ignored warnings. A 2025 study found that 200 tailings dams are currently at high risk of failure. 200 potential Fundãos. Waiting to happen. The technology exists to build safer dams. Dry stacking instead of wet storage. Better monitoring systems. Regular independent inspections. But these cost money. And in an industry where margins are everything, safety is often the first budget cut. This is the pattern. Short-term profits, long-term disasters. And when the bill comes due, corporations deploy armies of lawyers to avoid payment. Right now, the same dynamic is playing out in other industries. Chemical plants, oil pipelines, industrial agriculture. The incentives are identical. Maximize returns, externalize risks, let someone else deal with the consequences. The BHP ruling challenges this model. It says that parent companies are responsible, that distance doesn't equal immunity, that the full cost of business must be paid. Whether this actually changes corporate behavior remains to be seen. One ruling, even a historic one, doesn't transform an industry overnight, but it does create precedent. It gives victims a legal pathway. It raises the cost of negligence, and it puts other corporations on notice. So what should you take from this? First, understand that the price of corporate negligence is often paid by communities, not shareholders. The £36 billion liability sounds massive, but spread over 10 years of BHP profits, it's manageable. The real cost was borne by the 600,000 people who lost their homes, their health, and their livelihoods. Second, recognize that legal accountability is possible but difficult. The BHP case took 10 years to reach this ruling. 10 years of litigation, appeals, and delays. Most victims don't have the resources for this kind of fight. Third, appreciate that regulatory frameworks matter. The UK court's willingness to assert jurisdiction over a Brazilian disaster reflects a changing legal landscape, one where multinational corporations can no longer hide behind national borders. The Fundão Dam collapsed 10 years ago, but the case is just reaching its climax now, and the implications will be felt for decades. If this revealed something you didn't know about corporate liability, subscribe. Because next week, we're investigating another billion-dollar disaster, one that could affect your insurance rates. The money always tells the story. You just need to know where to look. This is Collapse Report, where we follow the money from boardroom decisions to bankruptcy filings.